When I first saw the demos for Google's new IDE product called Antigravity, I was genuinely excited. Not hype train excited, but actually interested. Because there are a few ideas in there that looked like real progress for what an agentic IDE could be. The ability to manage multiple separate projects with multiple agents working on them, all from a single centralized window, that's something I've actually wanted. And the review process, where it can automatically fire up Chrome and record a screencast and check the agent's work, that's a genuinely clever approach to verification. So I cleared some time this week and I gave Antigravity a real try. And I have to be honest with you, what I found was dysfunctional. I almost decided not to even publish this video because I couldn't even complete the demo that I had planned. But in the end, I wanted you to see what I'm seeing, both the good and the bad, because there are some legitimately good ideas here for pushing forward what an agentic IDE should be. And I have to give the team at Google credit for that. But if I'm honest, I'm also kind of surprised to see a product this rough around the edges ship from a company as large as Google. Not to mention the fact that they forked VS Code, a Microsoft project, to build it. That's an interesting choice as well. So today you'll see my first look at Google Antigravity. Who knows, maybe some of these ideas might actually stick. Maybe they'll fix the bugs and this thing becomes actually usable. Or maybe Cursor might take a few cues from these genuinely good concepts here and execute them in a way that actually works. I want to hear what you think in the comments. Now, before I dive in, if you're new here, I'm Brian Castle. I help professional developers stay ahead of the curve when it comes to building with AI. And every week, I send my Builder Briefing. That's a free 5-minute read to help you stay sharp. Get yours by going to buildermethods.com. And subscribers can get in on my live workshops. This month, I'm covering my AI-first design process. So you can join me live or grab that recording if it's already passed. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so let's fire up Antigravity and we'll see what we're working with here. Now, when I open it up, I'm looking at what they call the editor view, which is very, very similar to Cursor and VS Code. As I said, it is a fork of VS Code. But the other main view is what they call their agent manager. And I would say that between these two views, the agent manager is where Google Antigravity is really trying to innovate and really push their vision for what an agentic IDE should be. And so really the whole point of using Antigravity would be to use it in this view, in the agent manager. Because my first impressions of the editor view, again, are just exactly the same as, VS Code or Cursor. I'm not really seeing a whole lot that's like different or a good reason to use this view. And to be honest, I really do wish that this agent manager view and the editor view were sort of merged in the same window. Because as I'll talk about here, I am pretty interested in some of their ideas for how an agentic IDE should be laid out here in the agent view. But I do like how in Cursor I could easily flip between them in a single window. Now, before I get too deep into the unique aspects of Antigravity, since this is a VS Code fork, that means that you can import your settings and your key bindings and your extensions. So for example, if I open up the user settings, by default, when I just fire up Antigravity for the first time, this is empty. So I haven't customized any user settings yet. But if I go over to Cursor and I open up the user settings there, which, as you know, Cursor is also a VS Code fork. So I can grab all of my user settings, this JSON, and just drop it in here. And once I save that, it's going to ask me to restart because, it changes the layout a little bit. So there we go. I mean, that changes some of the sizing, a little bit of the colors, and I've got some other settings in there. The other thing that I'll want to do is get my key bindings in there. So I'll go to the keyboard shortcuts, JSON, and I have a bunch of custom key bindings that I've set up in Cursor and VS Code. And I'm going to drop these in my keyboard shortcuts JSON in Antigravity. And I'll do that. So now I have all of my common keyboard shortcuts that I'm used to from my days of working with VS Code and Cursor, which is my everyday IDE at the moment. So, like for me, I like to use like Command T to pop up the terminal, Command L to open up the chat, Command B to open up my file explorer. And I've got a whole bunch of other key bindings that I use every single day, all the time. And in fact, I did an entire video about how I try to stay fast and stay on the keyboard without touching the mouse in Cursor. I did that a few months ago, so you can check that out on my channel. All right, so I've got my custom settings and my key bindings imported into Google Antigravity, the way that I'm used to having them from VS Code. So that's kind of nice. But let's get into some of the more unique features that Antigravity has to offer. And what I'm always trying to look for when I'm evaluating a new tool is how useful is this compared to what I'm currently using? Now, I would be coming from Cursor, so everything that I evaluate here is going through the lens of like, is this actually better than Cursor for my particular workflow when it comes to building products every day using AI? So let's open up that agent manager, and I can do a Command E to open that up. And one of the very first things that popped out to me about Antigravity that seems different and maybe better, something that I'm really intrigued by, is the idea of having multiple workspaces here in the sidebar. I work on several different projects from day to day. I'm working on my Builder Methods site every day, of course. I've got my personal site. I'm always spinning up new apps and working on things. So it's really nice to have different workspaces, because when I am using Cursor, what I'm often doing is just opening up, multiple Cursor windows and throwing them across my different desktops and flipping around with different windows for each individual workspace. I kind of like that from a mental model, because like every project is completely separate from a workspace standpoint. But I really like the idea of at least trying to consolidate all of my different projects and different agents working on different projects in a single sidebar like this. So that's kind of interesting. And here in this agent manager, we have this, centralized chat, which is very similar to the new Cursor 2.0 agent view, or whatever they call that. Here in the dropdown, I can open up any of the workspaces that I have opened over here. And so that would so if I want to like flip over to my Builder Methods project, I would do that. And now I'm going to kick off an agent with that one. Or if I wanted to go to this little demo app where I was listing out baseball teams, I can do that. Now I'm going to come back to interacting with different workspaces and agents here in just a sec. But one other new concept that I really kind of like about what Antigravity is proposing here is this idea of the playground, because this really matches something that I do almost every single day, which is quickly spinning up new, often temporary projects to use as demos or to test something out, but not really a project that's going to turn into something, or maybe it will. So rather than going through the whole process of like actually spinning up a whole new project and creating a GitHub repo for it and creating a workspace for it, I can just start coding. I can just start hacking on something in the playground. I can just hit that. And let's go ahead and have Gemini 3 spin up a simple demo app. I'll use dictation for this. Please spin up a front end, client side only Vite and React app. Also use Shad CN components and Tailwind CSS. Let's create a simple to-do list manager with checkable checkboxes and the ability to add new items to the list. I know, it's just a to-do list app. It's super simple, kind of boring, nothing exciting here. But the purpose of this video and this demo is really to just kind of kick the tires on Google Antigravity and see what these features are all about. So let's just get that going. The other thing, by the way, is, Google is providing some token usage for Gemini 3 when you're using Google Antigravity, but I have noticed that just with a little bit of use earlier today, I've already kind of burned through that token limit, and I had to wait about an hour until I can start using it again. So that's why I'm just going to try to keep it simple here and keep it pretty light on the agent token usage. And that was just a simple request, and I can see agent taking unexpectedly long to load. All right. What happens if I hit this button, open editor? Okay, so that takes me back to the editor view, and I'm still looking at this temporary, if you will, playground app, but I don't really know what's happening. So I've been running into a lot of these little clunky UX issues when I'm just trying to play around with Antigravity. Like I just got to be honest, my first run experience throughout today and yesterday playing around with it just doesn't really click too much. All right. Let's try to get this going. And I can't even seem to stop it either. I don't know. Should we try the old quit it and reopen it? Let's try that. All right. So I'm going to go back to the playground. I'll just try this again. I'm just going to say, hello, is this thing on? Okay. So after a little bit of a wait, it did respond. So it looks like we're up and running. And this is clearly a bug because this little MLB Teams page was a test playground that I started earlier, and I had already moved that into my workspaces, but now it's calling this new playground by the same name, which is confusing and doesn't seem correct to me, but we'll keep rolling with it. Let's just try to get it to actually spin up an app that I can build something on. Spin up a client-side only app with Vite, React, ShadCN, and Tailwind CSS. Make it a simple to-do list manager with checkable tasks and titles for each task. And you know what? Let's actually try out the planning mode before we actually build that and take a look at that. One thing I've noticed, I don't know if it's just like today and it's sort of high traffic, but Gemini 3 seems to be working even slower when I'm running it in Antigravity compared to when I've been using Gemini 3 in Cursor. Yeah, no, this totally crapped out. Okay, here we go. I think we are finally actually working. Let's see how it does. Third time's a charm here. I mean, maybe it's because it's a playground. Let's just try creating a new workspace, I guess. All right, so normally when I start up a new project, I would use the terminal to do that, maybe to make a directory or to clone a GitHub repo or something. In this case, for a super simple demo, I would want to open up a terminal and make a new directory. Unfortunately, in the agent manager view, I can't just do that off the bat. So if I try to hit Command J, which is supposed to open the terminal, I can't do that. And I think because we can't actually open up a terminal until I'm already in a conversation, like an active conversation with an agent, which is kind of baffling if you ask me. So for example, if I'm in here, so this was something that I worked on earlier. I added a feature to my Builder Methods app. Since I already have an active conversation going in one of my workspaces, I can open up the terminal now. And of course, it assumes that I'm in my Builder Methods directory. So, here I would be able to, CD out of it. But again, just like in terms of like context, okay, I like the idea of being able to flip between multiple workspaces, and even conceptually the idea of having a playground all in one window here. But if it requires actually like talking to an agent before I'm even able to open up a terminal and, either start up a new folder or change the Git branch that I'm on, that just doesn't really make any sense to me. Of course I could just go back to the editor view. And again, I'm still in one of my workspaces. I'm not in my general agent manager view here. So just the context and the management of these different windows, we still have multiple windows happening. So it sort of defeats the purpose of having this one centralized manager. Anyway, let's at least try to get something going here, right? So I'm going to sort of CD to my temp folder, and I will. Okay, so I've just created a folder, and now let's open up a workspace for that. Okay, here is demo app. Now we're in an actual workspace. I would have liked to start this off as a playground and then convert it to a workspace, but that just didn't work here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a demo app. And again, I can't even open up the terminal here until I start talking to it. So let's just try this one more time. And let's do that in planning mode, and we'll see it create a plan. Okay, so now that I'm talking to it, now I would actually have the ability to open up the terminal, and if I had Git initialized, I could change branches if I wanted to. Which again, that workflow just doesn't really work for me, because I would want to change or start a new branch before I have the agent working on something. But the way that Antigravity is set up, I can't actually open up the terminal and create a new branch until the agent has already started working on something. Very strange. Okay, so it looks like it has started to create the implementation plan. One other concept that I do like about Google Antigravity is this idea of artifacts. So I could pull open this sidebar here, and this is a really interesting concept for an agentic IDE. And Cursor doesn't really have something quite like this, where we have these artifacts like planning, and sometimes when we get into the review stage, there are media videos or browser recordings or browser screenshots. Those would show up as artifacts. So I do like the idea of having these planning documents and review documents, as well as a list of file changes, having that separate from my files explorer. Typically in Cursor, I would be saving plans or saving specs as markdown files in the code base itself. But I do like the idea of having them like visually separated into this artifacts sidebar. So that's a really cool idea. I kind of wish that Cursor would pick that up. Now, something that's also interesting, like I thought I was still in planning mode, but it appears to have just gone ahead and started implementing the app, which is fine, but that's not what I expected from a user experience. So, like there are just a lot of rough edges, and I'm pretty surprised to see that kind of thing from a huge company like Google, to be totally honest. Again, one of the unique ideas that Antigravity is bringing to the table here is the idea of being able to comment on, highlighting individual lines and leaving a comment and bringing that comment into your conversation with the agent. Again, that's something I haven't really seen. Cursor does have the ability to sort of like highlight and do some like inline agentic coding, but this is more of a conversation with your agent, and it makes it really easy to reference specific details that might be off or need some course correction in your plan. And hopefully later I can get to a point where I have a visual review thing that I can comment on as well, if we ever get there. I'm going to accept this. I would have liked that to be a little bit more like alert, like this is waiting for my attention. All right, so it's still working on this. It's been several minutes. And again, I did a version of this demo using Cursor earlier today, sort of in prep for this, and it handled spinning up a simple app like this in a matter of minutes, even using Gemini 3. It just seems to be just moving a lot slower when I'm using Antigravity. One thing I do like about the feed here is that the interface seems a little bit more intuitive. I like how these are like collapsible and they animate a little bit. I've got this little arrow here. So that does make it a little bit easier for me to like visually scan what's going on compared to some of the other tools where I'm just seeing a feed of text fly by and it's sort of hard to get a read on what's happening. And you know what? Going back to the issue with the agent just going ahead with the proceeding of doing the plan, I do see this setting up here. Oh, I just lost it. Oh yeah, over here. Agent decides. Looks like always proceed, agent decides, or request review. So I thought that would relate to just like asking my permission to install things or run commands. I didn't know that this would also result in making a plan and then having the agent proceed to building that plan. That just seemed like a little off to me compared to what the normal workflow I think should be when we're talking about spec-driven development, right? I want to think about the spec, make a plan, think about the plan, review the plan, and then I want to be the one to say go. And so even if I'm giving it permission to run commands and stuff, I still want to be the one to initiate, like, yes, we're going to go ahead and build this now. And I would say at this point, like, it's been almost 10 minutes of waiting for it to spin up an extremely simple demo application, a to-do list app. Oh, okay. So here's where, the interface kind of got in its own way. Like if something was like, this is waiting for me to accept, but I didn't even see that because it was tucked away. It was tucked away inside of this expand thing. I only happened to notice that one step requires user input. I mean, that should be alerting me in my face that's saying like, this is not making progress until you open this up and click expand. I don't know. I'm trying to stay positive, trying to find the positive in this. Let's see if I can make this always proceed. I'll accept that one. And maybe that'll make the future requests just go through. Oh, I hit the limit. We haven't even finished. Oh man. Speaking of selecting models, this is almost a deal breaker. I would say it is a deal breaker for me. It's just the lack of selection here with the models. Obviously, Google is going to give us Gemini 3 Pro as an option. They do have Claude Sonnet 4.5, but they don't have Claude Opus 4.5. And I have a Claude Pro account, and I would like to be able to use that in my IDE, but apparently that's not an option. I do sometimes use GPT-5, but that's also not available here. And I did go into the settings to try to see if, like in Cursor, where you can add and remove all sorts of different models, we don't seem to have that option here in Google Antigravity, at least not right now. So, pretty limited, but let's see if we can actually get this simple demo app up and running. Hopefully by the end of this video, let's see if we can have Claude Sonnet 4.5 pick up the pieces here. I'll just say continue. Now, again, I did set it on always proceed, but it's still asking me for permission to run some things. So, okay. So Antigravity has launched its Chrome browser, and you can see the blue glow around it. Of course, I'm looking at an error. It's not actually, the simple app is just not actually working yet. Let's see if it can work through the issues that it's finding there. But this browser is being controlled by, I guess this is Sonnet 4.5 through Antigravity. Okay, so this just looks like a complete fail, if you ask me. It says that it's completed. I see we have a walkthrough, and this is what features supposedly were implemented. And it gave me a screenshot of it not working. I mean, what are we talking about here? So, I mean, what if I just run this myself? Whoa. Okay, I thought clicking that would, wow. I can't clear, okay, that's not even clearing the terminal. Let's at least try to get it working. What is this? That is not a Tailwind class, so I don't know what's happening there. Of course, it seems to be using Tailwind 3, not Tailwind 4. Okay, so now we're up and running. I would have liked to show the actual review process that Antigravity offers. That was one of the things that I was most excited about when I watched the preview videos for Antigravity, was the fact that it should be able to open up your app and use it and record its own screencast to review and show that it's working. In this case, it tried to do that, but it clearly was not working. Now, one more aspect of this agent manager view, which again, I like it in concept. I like the idea of being able to have access to all my workspaces and be able to flip between them, which is something I actually do in my workflow day to day. But I do often want to see the actual files, right? I want to be able to pull open a file and either edit code myself or at least just review how the code and how the project is organized, even if I'm not the one coding it, right? So if I'm here in Agent Manager view, instead of opening up separate window, like I could open up this demo app, I can click Open Editor, and that's going to open up the traditional VS Code based editor here. But that is already a separate window, and that sort of defeats the purpose of having a singular window to manage multiple workspaces. So my question is, can I actually open up files and look at my project files while I'm looking at the agent view or the agent manager? The answer seems to be sort of. I can open up single files here. So I can use the search. If I know the name of the file, I can find it and then open it up, and then I can look through it. And again, we have that really nice commenting interface. So that's really cool. What I'm missing is the file explorer. If I go back to the actual code editor here, I could actually see my project. I can see the folders. And even though I might not click through this very often, I do often look at it to see the structure and also to find, a lot of times I'm looking for sections of code that I don't even know what the file is named, and I just have to sort of visually look for it. It's nice to know that I can open up single files, but I still want to be able to just look at my file. I still just want to be able to look at my file explorer when I'm in this agent manager view, if you will. So that's Google Antigravity. And look, I wanted to like this. The ideas here are genuinely good ones. Multi-project management, multiple agents in one window, that screen recording review process. These are real innovations that push forward what an agentic IDE should be. But ideas only matter if the execution is there. And right now, it's just not. Maybe they'll ship fixes and this thing becomes something worth using. And I hope that they do. But if you're looking for an agentic IDE that actually works today, the one that I use as my daily driver, then you need to see what the team at Cursor just shipped with their 2.0 version. It's a much better take on an AI-first code editor, and I did a full review of Cursor 2.0 and the features that I'm actually using in my daily workflow. So right after you hit subscribe on this channel, I'll see you over there next. Let's keep building.